Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a sci-fi action movie called Dark Planet. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in the year 2157, where war, hunger, and terrorism are things of the distant past. Climate crisis has been averted, and medicine has advanced so much that people rarely suffer from any disease. On top of it all, space travel has become normal for the citizens of Earth. Currently, a young man named Max is traveling around the universe in his own spaceship, but he doesn't reach far, as an asteroid suddenly hits the ship and damages it severely. This forces Max to start preparing for an emergency landing. Unfortunately, the ship has become impossible to steer and crashes on the nearest planet. Max manages to get out right before it explodes, but he's now stuck on this strange land with no means of communication to home. Following this, he starts exploring the area and sees a creature in a nearby forest. Before he can approach it, a native soldier named Zeph shows up and points a gun at him. Max realizes that he cannot understand Zeph and grabs a small translation device from his belt, but the soldier perceives it as a threat and shoots at Max's belt. He then arrests the outsider and takes him to the nearest town. There, Max watches in shock how the town looks like a grim and primitive version of Earth. Zeph then hands him to a lab, where some scientists put a weird helmet on his head. This device helps him look into the stranger's thoughts while they interrogate him. However, they still don't believe he's an alien, and decide to send him to a mental hospital in the capital. A soldier named Guy Gal is then given the responsibility to escort Max to the capital city. At this moment, Max feels a strange radiation pass through the area. He looks on as every person nearby enthusiastically chants the country's anthem and promises loyalty to the government. It is almost as if these people have been hypnotized into hyper-nationalism by the radiation. However, Zeph collapses on the city's streets and has a seizure, causing the authorities to take him away. It is then revealed that this planet is named Sabotage, and the country where Max landed is called Fatherland. It is ruled by a military dictatorship headed by a group of men named the Unknown Fathers. Unbeknownst to the public, they use towers to emit radiation that sends the people into a nationalistic frenzy. This keeps the citizens diverted and allows the Unknown Fathers to maintain unilateral control. However, some people react with epileptic seizures instead of nationalistic pride during the radiation. Such people are termed as degenerates and are considered enemies by the government. After the radiation passes, Guy takes Max towards the capital in a convoy of vehicles. The latter notices some huge towers every couple of miles and is perplexed. So, Guy explains that these towers are protection against rebel attacks. Suddenly, an explosion destroys the base of a nearby tower, making it fall on the road. The debris kills a lot of travelers and destroys most of the convoy. A huge metal rod then pierces Max's compartment, and Guy gets caught under the rubble. Thankfully, the outsider immediately rushes to help and pulls him out. In the aftermath of this incident, Guy is forced to take his prisoner to the city on foot. Meanwhile, the news of an outsider suddenly appearing on the planet has already reached the high-ranking officials in the capital. The head of the Department of Special Research, Stryker, becomes curious, so he asks one of his employees, Funk, to bring this stranger to his office. On the other hand, Guy hands Max to the authorities and goes back to his post. The outsider is then kept in a dangerous facility, where they put him in a tank to keep probing into his mind. However, they are interrupted by Funk, who takes the stranger away. Meanwhile, in a government building, State Prosecutor Umnick also asks his employee to keep an eye on Max. He then checks the time and dismisses everyone from his chamber. Following this, Umnick heads to the bathroom, just in time for the radiation to start. Turns out he also gets seizures, which is why he hides in private during the radiation. Meanwhile, Funk is escorting Max in his car when he also starts having a seizure, but the outsider is unaffected due to his Earth physiology, and he uses this opportunity to escape. Elsewhere, in a secret government building, the Unknown Fathers have a meeting. It's revealed that Strike and Umnick are also part of this dictatorship. They have gathered to punish one father who made a public mistake. They immediately kill him off, showing they're ruthless, even with each other. Meanwhile, Max ends up in a bar where he meets a waitress named Rada. The woman is so beautiful that he quickly develops a crush on her. Using his good looks and charm, he then manages to engage her in a conversation. The duo chat for the entire afternoon, and it is revealed that Rada is Guy's sister, and when she learns that the outsider knows her brother, she happily invites him to her place. Later, when Guy arrives home, he is shocked shocked to see Max there. He initially tries to arrest him, but the outsider reminds him how he saved his life earlier. This eventually changes Guy's mind, and he allows him to stay. "No banging my sister, though. No promises, Guy." Alright. Days pass by, and Max learns a lot about the culture of Fatherland. He realizes that the locals have no idea about space and the existence of other planets. History books say that the unknown fathers stopped the war against the degenerates with the towers and saved the country. Furthermore, Guy is very enthusiastic about wanting to defend his homeland and invites Max to become a guard as well. The outsider sees this as an opportunity to get rid of the authorities following him, so he immediately agrees. However, since Max has no official documents, Guy has to convince his commander Chachu to allow him to join the army. The latter agrees, but says that the newcomer has to go through and pass their training first. A few days later, Max learns the military chant and appears for the trials. During the test, he must run through areas on fire and shoot at the signs representing degenerates. Max, having come from a very advanced planet, excels in such simple exercises and passes the test with flying colors. At home, the bond between Max and Guy deepens, and they spend most of their time sparring with each other. Max also develops a romantic chemistry with Rada, and it appears that he's living his best dang old life on this planet. Soon afterwards, Max receives a letter of acceptance from the army. He is thrown to the deep end right away and has to immediately join a raid in rebel lands. During the mission, the soldiers storm into the enemy buildings with the utmost brutality. They use bombs without caring for the local population and even mistreat people along the way. Max is shocked to discover that the so-called rebels are just terrified normal humans and immediately drops his gun. But he is forced to watch on as dozens of normal humans are brutally arrested. Chachu later confronts him and asks why he dropped his weapon in the middle of the mission. The outsider explains that the word degenerate made him think he would fight against wild beasts, not poor citizens. The commander admits that the degenerates feel pain too, but doesn't seem to care about it at all. Later, in the capital, the fathers judge the rebels while flashing very bright lights at them. Some prisoners deny any rebel activity, while others insult the fathers, screaming that they've killed a lot of innocent people. Depending on their attitude, some prisoners are sent to do daily work, while others are executed. Max has to watch it all, and he is left in complete shock. After work, he tries to tell Guy how wrong all of this is, but the latter is completely brainwashed into supporting his government. That evening, the two are called to Chachu's office for questioning. The commander wants Max to prove his loyalty to the army, so he takes them to the forest and asks Max to shoot the two rebels who have been sentenced with the death penalty. The outsider pretends to oblige and takes them away from there. However, upon reaching a bit further, he lets the rebels go without any consequences. Max then returns to the commander and honestly reveals what he has done, but this turns out to be a big mistake, as Chachu gets furious and ends up shooting him several times. He then drags Guy back to the capital, leaving Max's body in the forest. In the meantime, the fathers are discussing tactics to conquer neighboring nations. Umnik points out this would be a great moment to put together all their guards into one huge army. To achieve this, they'll have to find a way to make the public accept the idea of a full-scale war. So, they come up with a plan for a fake assassination attempt on one of the fathers. This will serve as a pretext to launch an annexation assault. That evening, the rebels in the forest find an unconscious Max. They had heard the sound of several gunshots earlier and are shocked to see him alive. Nonetheless, they take him back to their base and look after him. When Max finally wakes up, he explains about Earth's medical technology that allows its citizens to recover quickly from almost any kind of wound. It is then revealed that he can only be killed by a shot directly to the head. Meanwhile, the rebels explain that the fathers are dictators who took power by force. The towers aren't for defense, but instead send out waves to brainwash people. That's why they always go through a patriotic frenzy at the same time, twice a day. Upon hearing this, Max learns how manipulative the Fatherland's government has become. Therefore, he agrees to join the rebels so they can bring down the fathers and free the citizens from their illusions. A few nights later, Max and the rebels cut down a fence to cross into a territory that has a huge tower. The rebels then open fire on the guards, and the alarm is raised. Meanwhile, Max runs through the facility without fearing the incoming bullets and knocks down several soldiers that come in his way. Soon enough, he manages to get under the tower, where he installs several time bombs. Max then ties a rope around any rebel he can find lying around, regardless if they're alive or not. Thanks to his strength, he manages to drag all of them to the forest right before the tower explodes. In the next scene, Max heads to Rada's home and the two have an emotional reunion, but unbeknownst to them, a neighbor spots Max and immediately reports him to the authorities. Moments later, Guy arrives home and an argument ensues between the two men, but before they can get into a physical fight, several soldiers show up to arrest Max. The fugitive immediately runs out and starts beating up the soldiers using his quick moves. However, he is forced to surrender when the cunning Chachu takes Rada hostage. In the aftermath, Max is thrown in jail with a bunch of prisoners, including Zeph and a rebel who has a metal arm. Meanwhile, Strike visits Umnik, and the two sit down for a discussion. Since Umnik is in charge of the re-education program, Strike wants him to release Max so he can study the outsider. They eventually come to a deal after an intense back and forth. However, once he's alone, Umnik sees Max's profile and learns that he doesn't have seizures. This fills Umnik with greed, and he now wants that power for himself. So, he orders his employee to kidnap Max. He also orders to make it look like the outsider mysteriously disappeared. In the morning, the prisoners, along with Max, are sent to pick up the weapons that were left behind during last night's skirmish. This is when Umnik plays his move, and Max's group suddenly sees a bunch of killer robots heading towards them. The group can sense that something is off, and Max tells everyone to immediately drop to the ground. As expected, the robots soon open fire, shooting in circles with no signs of stopping. However, Max keeps a cool head and takes leadership under such an intense situation. He orders his comrades to wait for his signal to fire back. Soon enough, he sees an opening and gives them the green light. The rebels then target the robots one by one until they're all destroyed. The group then continues to search the area for any remaining weapons. During this, Zeph suddenly falls into a hidden hole, and Max jumps in to help him. To their surprise, they discover a series of underground tunnels that leads them to an old abandoned facility. There, they find several pieces of equipment and even human bones lying on the floor. The group is checking out the equipment when suddenly, a mutated human-like beast lunges at them. It manages to get Zeph in a very strong chokehold and is ready to bite him off. But Max intervenes just in time and beats the beast off with his bare hands. The next morning, Max and Zeph return to the surface. They then reunite with the metal arm rebel in the forest and continue to search the area. Among the trees, they find a small unmanned red tank stuck in a bunch of vines. The group is intrigued and tries to investigate up close, but it turns out to be a trap, as another tank, which is colored black, ambushes them from behind. The group somehow manages to hide behind the trees, but now they are pinned with no way out. At this critical moment, Max gets an idea. He waits for the perfect moment until the black tank arrives close to them. Then he grabs a rocket launcher they found last night and shoots at the red tank. It fires back indiscriminately, and the black tank gets destroyed in the crossfire. Max uses this opportunity to sneak behind the red tank. He then quickly climbs inside and cuts the wires to make it stop. By this point, the rebels have gathered a substantial amount of weapons. They are now ready to bring down the government by themselves, and Max realizes that his job is done. Therefore, while having lunch, he abruptly announces that he wants to escape Fatherland. Following this, Max gets inside the red tank, repairs it, and drives it to the southern border. Several mines explode along the way, but the tank remains unharmed. After a while, he eventually makes it to a checkpoint where a few soldiers are guarding the exit. Max gets lucky, as the soldier in charge of checking the vehicles turns out to be Guy. Just as Guy jumps on the tank and opens the hatch, Max drags him inside. He then drives the tank forward, destroying the barricades and ignoring the other soldiers opening fire as they cross to unknown lands. Guy is furious because they may be executed for this, but Max keeps him in the tank and promises him a much better life. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.